A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the first of the Grants Plus series webinar. First, I would like to apologize because we had to reschedule the webinar due to one in Bangalore. And so I am Lalita from Dhwani Foundation. So a few instructions before we get started. I request all of you to put your audio on mute. And if you have any queries as the presentation goes on, please write your queries in the chat box along with your first name and the name of your organization. And for those of you, some of you already know Dhwani. For those of you who are not very familiar with Dhwani, Dhwani is a 16-year-old organization. The vision of Dhwani is a vibrant and credible social sector. So basically, Dhwani believes that we have different stakeholders in the social sector, and we firmly believe that all the stakeholders have to work together to really make the social sector credible and vibrant and more efficient. Dhwani has worked very closely with NGOs. We have worked very closely with federations. NGOs, so we have worked with more than 1,000 NGOs, so we really understand that space well. And now we have also started working with the other stakeholders in the sector. So why this topic? Sometime back, we conducted a survey and we spoke to many donors, CSRs, foundations, and we asked them, what are your main challenges? So a thumping majority, a vast majority of them came and told us that, we do not know how to select the right NGO. Is the NGO credible? How do we trust them? And how do we make sure that we are going to the right NGO? So hence, we decided that the first webinar in the series of Grants Plus webinar will be on how to identify and select the right NGO. I would now hand over to our speaker, our founder of the Dhwani Foundation, MJ Aravind. He will start the presentation from here. Thank you all again for accommodating the change in the schedule and being here today.
My name is Aravind, and I started Dhwani, as Lalita said, 16 years ago. And I started Dhwani because, like a lot of you, I came into the space first as a donor. And I spent a year and a half trying to navigate the system of the sector and trying to see how I should go about doing my little bit. And I have to tell you, it took a lot of time and I made a lot of mistakes before we started Dhwani Foundation. And then we decided to bring about some process into play for all the things that we are learning as we go along. So that really is my background. And what I'm going to do is take you through very crisply a little presentation on NGO selection. What we will do is I'll speak for about 20 minutes, and then we will have time for all the questions and comments that all of you may have. So if that works, let me go ahead. Right, let's start the presentation. So as Lalita was saying, in 2017, which is now 6 years ago, we surveyed about 100 people. And to all of them, we asked the same questions. What is it that keeps you awake at nights? And these was donors, these were government agencies, this was academics, think tanks, but also NGO leaders. So most NGO leaders came back and said, oh, all we need is money. But when the donors responded to us, they came back with a whole host of different things. And they said, it's not that they don't know the names of NGOs. Most of them get up to 3 or 4 proposals a week, which is what 200 proposals a year. But they don't know how to pick, how to sort between the many things which come up. And out of this emerged the program, of Grants Plus, in which we said we will go to donors and show them how they could select an NGO. But before that, what is a good NGO? We decided to build a process and a checklist, so to speak, of what makes for a good NGO. So what emerged is that there are 8 areas which donors obsess about. But it isn't just only the donors, it's also the government. It is also in some way the society. There is a lot of apprehension, there is a lot of doubt about, are NGOs on the level? Am I giving money to the wrong person? Will it meet the needs of society? Etc. etc. So some of the anecdotal stories that we heard about that time when we did the survey was, let me take a name. This was an MNC company, and we asked them how did they go about it. And they had gone to an NGO. It just so happened that I was working in the NGO at that time, that particular NGO. And they said they are going to give a grant. I think it was some 13, 40 lakhs. And a week later, their CFO walks into this NGO and goes for a walk around, goes back and sends a mail saying, "Oh, we haven't given you a grant." So obviously we called up and asked the CFO what happened. And he said, "Well, your organization is not very compliant." And we said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "For instance, there is something called Minimum Wages Act, and you should have known about it. It's applicable to you, and you're not paying your people as per the Minimum Wages Act." We said, "No, that's not true. The Minimum Wages Act on that morning in Karnataka was 9,300 odd. And we said our minimum pay starts at 10,500. He said, "No, the act says that just basic plus DA should be more than 9,300. So till you fix that, you are not a compliant organization." And he said, "Actually, there are 6 or 7 more. There are 6 or 7 more similar things about you." And he told us one by one what they were. So that's part one of the story. Part two of the story is obviously we fixed all of it, went back to him. And we said, at the end of 6 months, we said, we are compliant. And they immediately sent us a check for the 30, 40 lakhs. But the part three of this story is the best one. On the 27th of March, the same CFO calls us up and says, "Could you take another 40 lakhs?" And this is, we hadn't even sent him a proposal or anything. And then we discovered that we are probably the only organization, at least in his group, which is fully compliant. And all the money that he had, he wanted to give to us. So this is an example of a CSR, a corporate, which is obsessing about compliance to the law. There was another story we heard when we did the survey. And this story was even more interesting. So our man goes, the CSR chief goes to see the school in a remote village. And he walks in. And all the children have obviously been told in the school that somebody is coming today. And they've all been prepared. So as he walks in, all the students get up, hold their hands, do namaste, and say Jai Shah. And our man walks up. And he tells us this is not a secular organization. And the act says that they can only do it for secular reasons, while this seems to be a school which is propagating religion. So while some of you may find this a bit far-fetched, but these are some of the, what shall we say, obsessions that some donors have, especially corporate donors. I could tell you a whole host of stories about like this. There was another great story we heard about an NGO which got blacklisted because they weren't deemed to be okay. So we went to the donor and asked what the problem was. And he said he gave them money for conducting health camps. So at the end of the year, he goes back to the NGO and he says, so did the health camps happen? And they said, oh yeah, it was a great success. So he said, how many came for the first camp? And the NGO says, oh, 200, 250. So the guy says, was it 200, 250 or 232? And the NGO didn't have an answer. They again said, oh, about 200, 250. He said, okay, give me the list. And the NGO didn't have a list. They showed some photos and he said, oh, these photos could have been taken at any time, maybe 5 years ago, for all right. So what this donor was all about was auditable trails, was about data collection. So to each his own is what I would say about donors. Each have their own obsession. Each have their own requirements that they have to fulfill within, back to their board, because CSR is now at the board level. There is an independent director on your board who's supposed to sign off on CSR spend. So then we, as Dhwani said, what if we could take all these many things and put it all together and coach NGOs to meet all these many requirements? So what are these many requirements? The many requirements are actually 161 requirements, a list of 161. And they fall into these 8 categories, which is compliance, governance, accounting, HR, MIS. MIS also includes reports that they, the donor, need to go and show their board or to anybody else. Program management and leadership and strategy. So we signed up a few NGOs in our pilot batch. We worked with them for 2 years and tried to take them through each point and to see that they complied. And the good news is that the average score of the NGOs in that batch was better than 90%, which means 90% of the 161 points actually got implemented within each one of these NGOs. And what they had started with, baseline, was that they were not even compliant on 40% of the 161. So we took them from 40 to 90%. And let me tell you about these NGOs. A lot of them are small, a lot of them are rural. The leaders of some of these NGOs, some of them are just barely literate. But we also had the other extreme of one leader was a professor and head of the department in a medical college. So all sorts, but they all understood and they could all implement. What is this 161 points? Each is a clear yes, no. Either you have it or you don't. And let me show you a sample of just one of these categories. And this is about compliance. So as you can see, there are 21 points that you have to comply with for you to for you to say that you are compliant with the laws of the land. This is for any type of NGO. They could be running a school for disabled children, they could be in livelihood, they could be in farming related stuff, they could be doing something on health. But these 21 are applicable to all of them. Beyond this, in some categories, there are even more rules, even more compliances which are required. But these 21 are the basic rules that you have to follow. So either you are doing this or you are not doing it. So every yes counts, every no is a negative. So if you do all this while at 21 in compliance and then 20 each on an average on the other 7 categories, you are at 160, 161. Let me take just one example in this, point number 3, which is a valid ATG certificate. They should have one. They should have one specifically if they are taking money from CSR. Because you can't just give money to anybody on the road. You have to give to an NGO, and the NGO has to be having, an NGO is only an NGO in the government size if they have an ATG certificate. And so therefore, like this, there are so many, right? So that is what we do. That is how we made this list of 161. That is how we then sat with them and tried to see how they would implement one after the other. The classes that we run are obviously in local language. So we now run batches in Orissa, in Tamil Nadu, and in Karnataka. So wherever we run classes, we do it in the local language. They get it and then they go about implementing it. So I'm not going to take you through the whole governance thing, but governance is becoming quite an obsession, especially with the very large donor agencies or foundations, as we call it now. People like, say, the Azim Premji Foundation or Tata Trust. A lot of them want to see that the NGO is governed well. And by that, they mean that the NGO's board knows its function and is performing it. So these are the 22 points about what it means to be well governed. And this, like the previous 21, these 22 have also been derived partly from the survey that we did of the many donors and government, but also we saw SEBI's guidelines for good company governance, and some of this is adopted from that. So if only an NGO were to tick off all these 22 points, oh, it's a lovely thing and they are well governed. So that's the premise that we are going. Right? Next. So we handhold the NGOs. We run them through this. We handhold them while they go about implementing it. And over a period of time, we are now touching, as Lalita said, almost 1,000 NGOs, where in some form or the other, it's not the same pedagogy that we follow throughout. In some form or the other, we take them through these 161 points and see how they could comply, how they could implement it. So then we say, this is okay, but what about somebody like you who is sitting in a Delhi or a Calcutta? How are you going to do it? So one is we started sending out these lists to whoever asked for, the list of the 161. But then now we have made it into a tool, and this is a self-assessment tool. And you might want to use this when you go see the NGOs or when you're considering NGOs from your list of potential NGOs. You might want to use this tool, and you will be able to do a clear yes no on each one of these parameters. Some of these parameters have A, B, C. Totally, it comes to, I think, now 204. But we still call it the 161 parameter list and keep ticking it. And at the end of it all, the self-assessment tool churns out a report which looks something like this. Can you see that? So what it says is, in this particular case, this NGO is 94.6% compliant. On compliance, it is at 94.6. While on program planning and supervision, which is the other end, it is only at 20.1%. So this gives you, we would like to think, a very good profile of what these NGOs are. And depending on what your obsession is, it could be, like I said, on compliance with the law, it could be about auditable trails, it could be about whatever. You'll be able to get a very good fix on where this particular NGO starts. And if you have an option of more than one NGO, the NGO with a better score wins, so to speak. Does that make sense? So this is how we are doing it. A fair number of donors and foundations, individual donors, CSRs, and foundations have now started using this. and they are finding that this is in a way fairly logical, fairly unemotional, and they are sticking to facts. And so therefore this pleases when they push it up the chain, up to their directors. This pleases the directors too, because there is a quantified score for each one of the prospects that they have seen. So this is one thing that we have done, and this seems to be working. So we work with NGOs separately. We show them how to do it, and we want to push their scores all up to, like I said, about 90%. We give this tool also to donors on the side of the donors for them to use it themselves, for them to see if they could arrive at the score, if it is an NGO that is not working with. Next. So happy to share this with you. And if you could note down that email ID below, or Lalita will get back to you. So it's kvnayak@onefoundation.org. And what we could do is send you a copy of the self-assessment, or as we so cutely call it, SAT. So this is all I have to say. I'd like to believe selecting an NGO is very complex, very difficult. I'll have to spend years training you. But actually, it can be done fairly simply. Just use this tool, and you'll be able to get a quantified sort of ranking of the many NGOs you. So I'll stop here if you like, and happy to take all questions. No questions at all? Any comments? Can I start the top? Amit, any comments, any questions?
Yes, Arvind. First of all, thank you so much for organizing this session. It was very helpful. I would appreciate all the effort which Tani is actually taking up in raising the bar of the NGOs. And it's all the marking that you give to all the elements that are required is amazing, so that they can measure where they stand. So I have a couple of questions, Arvind. One is this tool also applicable to Section 8 companies, or only NGOs can use this?
Amit, except for compliance, where there might be a few differences, it is fully applicable. So governance, strategy, MIS, all of that, it's fully applicable for Section 8 companies too. It is only in compliance that Section 8 companies, because they are covered under the Companies Act, there are some other compliances which are not there. But all the rest, Amit, just works with this.
Oh, okay. That is fantastic. And any assistant?
Just 1 minute, I'll just recheck again. Gopi, am I right? Yeah, Gopi says I'm right. Yeah.
All right. So this tool will be free for NGOs to use it?
Pardon?
Can NGO use this tool for free, or there are any charges that NGOs need to pay?
No, actually, we don't copyright anything, Amit. We are an NGO ourselves, and we don't copyright anything. We don't have patents on anything. We are happy to distribute all that we have, and it is for free. So NGOs could use it, but I'm saying you could use it. You are a donor. You could have one of your people go sit there and do this. When you do your due diligence, use this tool along with every other tool that you have developed. This might help you do it yourself. So you could fill it up. But if you want an NGO to fill it up and send it to you, that's fine. Just forward the link that we are going to send to you to the NGO, and they can fill it up and send you the results.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Arvind, for your help.
Right. Can I move to Falguni? Falguni, any questions, any comments? SVP Bangalore?
No, I was just listening in because we are also a grant making organization. So your selection criteria helps us when we are also looking at rural NGOs, and some of them would need assistance of the kinds that Dhwani Foundation is giving. So it's just interesting for us to know about it.
So just like Amit said, you could use it on the NGOs that you're working with, or you could ask the NGOs to use the tool and send you back the results.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you.
Right. Fireflies, Jagadish. Gauri.
Hi, Arvind.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
No, the list what you have prepared, we also follow the similar list. So it's more or less the same thing which we are following. So now that you would be taking up in depth of it, because this is just the main pointers you have highlighted. Because if you see compliance, there are many things in compliance, governance, what exactly you mean by governance. So I'm waiting for that chapter to open up now to understand.
Yeah.
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 Otherwise,
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, more or less is the same thing. Even we are also following for the corporate as well as for the NGOs.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
And where are you from, Gauri? Which town, which organization?
Bangalore, and I'm from Vardhan Advisors Private Limited.
Very good. Very good. So happy to share with you, Gauri, not just this app, but anything else that you need.
Sure. So I would like to
Delighted
hear
to see you.
more to understand more what exactly you have prepared, such that if I have something to share in, I will surely pitch in.
Yeah, and we would love that.
Yeah.
We would love that. Thank you.
Thanks, Arvind.
Manke, is that I'm pronouncing it right? Manke, any comments, any questions? Mauli T.
Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, now you are.
Okay. Thanks, Arvind. Firstly, I was not. I mean, I joined a little late because of the technical issues. I'm sorry for that. I have certain questions, but just considering there's a session that's just going to get continued, probably my questions would be answered there. So I'll keep my questions till the end, and I would ask them.
No, there's no session after this, Mauli.
Or is it?
We just wanted to give you a little, what would you say? A little outline of what it means. So go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, you had just shared this scorecard, isn't it? You had just mentioned some of the areas that you specified, starting from compliance till those strategy and those information where you have bracketed out in different activities. And there's a score that you mentioned, starting from, it was scoring around 97%, some to 20%.
Yeah.
So how do you read that based on which that whether you select them or not? Because some of them, even though they score less, but end of it, they would be able to meet a requirement, or maybe they would be able to perform. That would not be a hindrance. But where in some cases, for example, compliance, it would be a huge risk. They would not go ahead. But where in some cases, where definitely it's an option that we can consider, or maybe we could just leave it. Or maybe that could be room for improvement.
Sure.
So
That's a
how
very
do you decide on that?
That's a very, very good question. So let me answer it in many ways. So the first is you could arrive at a single number. And the single number is not a weighted average, but is a straightforward average of these 8 subjects, these 8 chapters, so to speak. And if that is above 80%, you are talking to NGOs who are probably in the top 5% in India. Anybody above 80% will be in the top 5% in India.
Okay.
However, if you have, like I said, your own obsession and you're obsessed, let's say, about compliance, then you might want to see the breakdown by chapter and decide which chapters are more important to you and whether they are nearer to 100 in some of the things that appeal to you. I just have to warn you, however, nobody is ever at 100, even in compliance, because the government in the last year alone, just as an example, has brought in 4 or 5 new amendments to existing laws. And it takes time for people to put their house in order for these new laws. So nobody will be at 100, but anything above 85 is very good, including in compliance. All right. So we have seen in our 16 years of our existence, we have seen very few who are at 100 upon 100 in everything. And we have seen very few who are even 100 upon 100 just in compliance. Right. But if they are above 90, I would part with my money, is the way I look at it.
And that's very true, Arvind. I would like to add my point also. Yeah, nobody is 100% compliant. True. Because when we also do it, it is very difficult because the kind of projects they are in and the kind of programs they do, you cannot give them that high scoring, So I feel
Yeah.
it's up to the corporate also to understand, what is their CSR, what do you call the CSR program or policies inclined towards it. And based on that, it's a call which they have to take and decide whether they will go for that NGO or they will not go for that NGO. That's what my.
Yeah, the way I see it is, I'm not trying to be cynical, but we all have to compromise somewhere. I mean, you want to go buy a new smartphone today. There are some 20 parameters, and if no phone is the best in all the 20, even in your price range, right? Whatever your price range. So then you decide ki this is more important than that.
Yes.
Oh, battery life is what I should be concerned about, or just sound quality. I will award it more marks. But we in Dhwani think all 161 are equally important. We don't give weightage to this more than the other. And so therefore, and that is therefore left to you to decide whether you want to weight one set of parameters over some others. Does that
Okay.
make sense, Maureen?
Yeah, it makes. But your connotation to the phones of 20 parameters and as well as this 161 with choosing an NGO, I just slightly beg to differ, because a phone, when I had to purchase, the risk element would be hardly anything, and it is only to individual to me, and I mean the consequence only to me. But when it's as an organization and I choose an NGO, when I tend to compromise a bit or I make a wrong decision, that has a huge repercussion on my organization, especially on my board or so. But however, from the compliance, you mentioned that's 94% or 85 and above is good. But I'm sure that that self-assessment test, when I go through, I'll have an idea. But otherwise, there would be certain weightage that you would give when you have to choose or when you have to score an NGO. I mean, when you have to score an NGO on compliance, I'm sure there'll be certain weightage that you would give for each and every element of compliance, right?
Correct. So that's for you to decide.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So you could weight it. You could weight it, and you could say, I'm less concerned about, say, MIS, or not at all concerned about strategy. So, but I'm very concerned about compliance and governance. You could say that. And therefore, look at those two a lot more keenly than you would look at the rest.
Okay, that's again, you're talking about the eight different parameters set, those
Correct.
sets that you put up. What I'm asking is, even in compliance alone, I'm sure there will be many elements. It could be each and every documents what they have, and as well as certain guidelines they get to follow. Would you rate them? So how do you arrive at that percentage in compliance?
Mauli, in India, whether it's big or small, you can get challan.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just like you're driving your car, insurance is not there, this is not there, tail light is not working, everything is equal.
Yeah.
You could still get challan if you have everything, but the tail light doesn't work. So it's like that in compliance. Everything is actually equal. There is no, in the eyes of the government, uh, nothing is less important because actually there are 5 or 6 different departments which are looking at these 21 points. And to them, their points are the most important.
Okay. Okay.
Arvind, just to interrupt, would you be going in detailing what exactly compliance would be? How did you arrive to compliance? What are the pointers below under compliance? Would you be going through that? Or
I
governance?
can take you back page, that's what you are asking. But if your question is how did I arrive at these 21?
Yeah.
So I have to tell you, we are not, this is not the Dhwani religion.
Okay.
We are not the guru to decide what this is. A lot of it has come from the surveys.
Okay.
And the surveys tell us this is what it is. We have also perused the law and we have hired a legal advisor to take us through what is important, unimportant. So we have done 3 levels of check. The first is we asked, like that MNC that I talked about, we asked them what do they have on their list. And a lot of them shared their list with us. And all those points have been put in.
Okay.
And so it was a cumulative 21 points which came into this list. All right. In the case of governance, like I said, we again asked everybody what it is, and then we went to see the guidelines for companies and added that.
Okay.
So this is actually a accumulation of a lot of people giving their advice. We at Dhwani Foundation were just the scribes. We just wrote down everything.
Okay. Great.
Venkatesh, Shears, Temasek, can I hear you, please? Any comments, questions?
Arvind, Sunita had a question in the chat.
Yeah.
So she's asking, donors are worried to go to smaller and rural NGOs. And what should they look for when they're partnering with small and rural NGOs?
I'm not sure I should answer that. I'm trying to be very clean and they say I have a bias. So I have to tell you people before I speak, I have a bias for small, I have a bias for rural. And a lot of the Dhwani work that we do is with small and rural. So we love them. We love them more than we love the urban and the big. And urban plus big, we love them the least. So that's the way Dhwani is. But that's a bias. But having said that, what should you look for? I would say, Sunita, you should look for the same 161 points. The rules are the same, if you ask me, between a very big one, like say Akshay Patra, should also be at 90% plus. As much as this very small NGO in Bidar that you are looking at, Sunita, you should look at the same 161 point. I don't want you to differentiate between this and that, because all these are what we believe goes into the makings of a good NGO. So use the same yardstick. Whether you go to Akshay Patra or to this, or even whether you want to give money to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund, please use the same yardstick. Is the Prime Minister's Relief Fund getting a score of 20 out of 20 on governance is a good question to ask. Sunita, is that fine? You heard me? Let's move to Vikram Shankar. Vikram Shankar.
Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Vikram from Biocon Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah. I also had a feeling even the programs which we want to go for the NGO, it depends on the program also to decide on the NGO, like certain parameters, which might not be very much needed for that particular program.
So let me see if I understood your question right. You're asking about programs and which programs.
Yeah. So
the way I read this is the first step is for you to decide which area you want to focus on. And that is what we call focus area selection. Right? This seminar assumes you already know what you are going to do about it. So you have decided you are going to work with, let us say, girl children in northern Karnataka. Now, that's something you should just go ahead and do it. I'm not going to tell you, no, there are other better, different. Once you have decided what the focus area is, and you have made a list of NGOs who seem to be in the same focus area, and you want to now decide between NGO A or B or C, then this tool becomes important or becomes useful. But what you should be doing is another thing.
No,
And that is not what this tool will help you with, unfortunately.
no, what I meant was, say I've chosen what
A bit
program.
louder, please. I can't hear you well.
Yeah, what I meant was, I have chosen a program to say implement in Yadgir. So the tool, when I start using it, even though if the NGO is 100% compliant in another program, I have to be specific for the program which I am trying to implement.
Oh, good. So, so you are right. In some of these questions, yeah, it is very specific to this program, and it might vary. For instance, in MIS, they may have a great MIS working already for some programs that they are doing for some other donors or for the government, where somebody has already instituted a process of MIS. And so you will have to see whether they can replicate that for this program. But what I have to tell you is the bulk of the 161 are not linked to a specific program and are applicable irrespective of which program you decide to. So I would say, and I have to ask Gopi this, Gopi, at least 130 of the 161 should be applicable irrespective of what program they are doing, right?
Yes, certainly, because this is irrespective of which program you run. You are looking at whether the organization has required process and system. Because the whole parameters arrived at donor one, of course, you look at the how much good they are in the program, the experience, but more than that, the systems and processes what we believe all of you require the same. So from that perspective, most of it, I would say even more than 130 parameters, is essential for you to declare yes, this organization is fit for to receive your grants. Of course, then you will add program parameters.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Who else would like to? Mr. Ramanathan. Mr. Ramanathan is the president of a federation of NGOs, which is the Disability NGO Alliance. And he is based in Mysore, Bangalore. Mr. Ramanathan, any questions? I'm also curious why you are here. This was meant for donors. Mr. Ramanathan? Okay, so we have lost it. Sanjay Jha.
Hi Sanjay. Hi, Arvind. This is Sanjay from Eka Impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you know, we are building a platform to help NGOs connect with various kinds of donors, including CSRs and HNIs. We would love to integrate this tool into the product and thereby help the corporates evaluate the NGOs better.
Excellent, excellent. So like I was saying earlier, Sanjay, we don't copyright anything, we don't patent anything. So we can, any way you can use what we have, we'll be delighted.
Yeah, great. Thanks for this valuable lesson.
Yeah. So, folks, if there are no more questions, I'd like to move to the last part of this session. And that is, we plan to do a number of seminars like this, an hour and a half, depending on what the topic is, max 2 hours. And we will do this probably at the rate of one a month. We now have your email IDs, and we will definitely inform you. The subjects will be different each time, but all to do with uh, how to be an effective donor, how to be, how to contribute to a vibrant social sector. Additionally, beyond these smaller seminars, we also plan to launch a larger program. And this larger program would be a face-to-face 4, 5, 6 days, maybe even longer, where we could give you a good grounding all the way from focus area to selection to awarding the contracts or the MOUs to monitoring and then finally to closing programs. So this will take you through the full life cycle of working with NGOs or Section 8 companies. And we would have in that program, we would have as faculty, we would have chartered accountants, we would have lawyers. The program makes sense for people, individuals who would like to give away their money, and they would learn how to do this by a certain process, as much as it would help staff at all levels in the CSR, as much as it would help the independent director on your board who signs off on CSR. And of course, it will help the staff in foundations. So, choti muh badi baat. I don't think I would want to be telling a Tata Trust how to run their stuff, but I'd like to believe I can help Tata Trust train some of their people who have recently joined them, right? So,
Any solutions for?
So if you have any queries, any suggestions on curriculum, anything that you have been caught on the wrong foot because you didn't know what to do, because you are functional donor people, happy to hear it all. And we should be in a position to announce the scores in, say, by the end of October. But in the meanwhile, we have put together the outline of what the curriculum should be, and we are working on lesson plans, but happy to take on more if you have any suggestions. This is open to people in the donor community. It's also a little open to staff in large NGOs who want to know how to work with donors and get the donor perspective. They could also join the course. So this course would be announced by the end of October, max, and we will inform all of you. Similarly, as we talk about future seminars, which we will do at the rate of one a month, please don't hesitate to forward the link to others who you think might be interested. Happy to have everybody join. So they just have to register and then they can join. So there's no screening or whatever. Right? So with that, if you permit, I will close the program. We had this very anonymous Gopi. So let me introduce Gopi to you. So Gopi is our executive director, over 2 decades of experience in the social sector. And he heads Dhwani Foundation. And Dhwani Foundation is now, what, 40 plus people working out of 3 or 4 locations. And Gopi heads all of them.
Good, nice actually having all of. So like Aravind said, this is something with our experience and what we heard in the ground. we said that we need to develop this sort of webinars and share with everybody. And it's good to see that so many of you have responded. Like he said, we have future plans. We want to see not just webinars, also to see whether we can even do face-to-face few days of training so that we can learn together, we can actually share from each other's experience. We do hope this is helpful, and we do look forward more and more of you joining, participating, and also giving us the suggestions. What could be our topics? What can we do differently? Please write back to Lalita. All of you have our email IDs, I hope. So please write to us, give your suggestions. We'll be very happy to take your suggestions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you again in our many seminars. Also, if you are in Bangalore, drop in. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.